Hey YouTube, this is Rich and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. It is Sunday, the car is on jack stands. My plan for this weekend was to lower the car, get the water pump in, fix the problem with the exhaust, resurface these headlights, put the LED bulbs in them, and get whichever one of these has had the tinted thing on them. I can't remember which one. I think it's this one. Unfortunately, most of yesterday was taken up doing the water pump. I did not film it. Well, I started to film it, but chose to stop because it ended up being a lot of cursing under one's breath and possibly throwing tools and banging knuckles where you didn't want them to be banged, and things not moving when they were supposed to and things moving when they weren't supposed to. So if we have another video like this where I develop a coolant leak, it's because I may or may not have over tightened the housing bolts on the water pump in my fit of rage. And at that point we will just replace the entire engine. I'm not doing that again. In better news, this week we received the lowering springs. Aren't they beautiful? Okay, wait, let me actually open the box. There we go. They're bright orange. I didn't really get a choice in color. Granted, when they were on sale for $99, I honestly couldn't care what color they were, just as long as they weren't pink. I had wanted to wait to do this until I could redo the front suspension, but this is something that I'm not going to be satisfied with how the car handles and how it looks until it is lowered. However, I'm not going to be able to redo the front suspension until I can paint the front suspension, and it is not the weather to do that right now. So the initial plan will be to remove the rear springs. Do this the way you're supposed to. Remove the shocks, take the old springs off of them, put the lowering springs on said shocks. And so that'll be how we lower the rear. For the front, I'm not going to use the lowering springs that I have because I already have the old lowering springs. The only reason I bought a whole new set was because you cannot buy just the rear lowering springs, apparently. So I had to buy a whole new set, and eventually the whole new set will go on. But for now, we're just going to run these. I'm just going to throw these on the front, change out the springs on the rear, and then when the summer comes and I can fully restore the front suspension, I will buy all new shocks all the way around, put all of my orange lowering springs on them so that all the suspension can look nice. But for now, I just want it lowered. I just want it lowered. I'm assuming that these springs are going to lower the front as much as the new springs do. I'm assuming they're the same drop, which means that the front is going to drop 2 inches. So I'm going to lose, this isn't an accurate depiction of how much gap it has because it's kind of tipped over right now. It's raised up on jack stands, but I'm going to lose about 2/3 of my wheel to fender gap in the front and roughly half of my wheel to fender gap in the rear, because it'll lower the rear 1.75 inches and lower the front a full 2 inches. I don't know if that levels it out or not, or just points the front end down for aerodynamics. I don't know. I don't care as long as my front end doesn't lift up on the freeway. I was going to try and take that stupid gutted cat resonator, whatever it is, out, but this whole exhaust has been more trouble than I wanted it to be. I'm just gonna put the dual exhaust back on for now. I feel like if I do a single exhaust build in the future, just as a baseline, I found out that the stock exhaust is like less than $200, and just the pipe that runs from the headers to the rear suspension is $90. $90, less than $100 to replace everything I had to do right there, and it would probably sound better, maybe slightly smaller diameter than I'm currently using, but it would still be uniform because I have so many different sizes of pipes between 2 and 2.5 inches on this car, it's not even funny. Granted, the dual exhaust isn't better, but at least I started with a smaller diameter at the front and ended with a larger diameter, whereas this one is just whatever would fit. So for now, we're just going to drop the dual exhaust in there and then lower the car. My plan for today, I'm going to get the car lowered today. We're just going to swap the exhaust out so we don't have to worry about that. The car is going to hit the ground today. I mean, not literally. It's not going to be slammed, but I want it to be lowered today. In order to do that, I'm going to have to hand roll the front fenders. These are already messed up, so I'm probably just going to take them off, take them inside, heat this outer edge up with a heat gun, and then just use a hammer on it on top of a block of wood, because I don't really care about these fenders. The back ones I will probably take to a shop to have them rolled, because I can't just take the rear fenders off. They're part of the car, so I can't just take them off. So I will have to try and get those done professionally. Hopefully, I feel like the front is more of an issue simply because these just have to go up and down. The front ones have to go up and down and turn side to side, so I will probably just hand roll those. But yeah, enough of the commentary.
Alright, one last look at the car. At stock ride height. Before I lower it. Make it look cooler. Not wait to see what this looks like. We're gonna start on the back first because I saw somebody online. I think he's in Brazil or something like that on the forum I'm on Facebook. And I couldn't tell. It looked like he put lowering springs in the back, but not the front, and it gave it a like sudden. It wasn't squatted, but it definitely looked like it was either even between the front and the back or lower in the back than in the front. I thought it looked kind of nice. Obviously, I'm not going to do that, but we're going to do that first just so we can see what it looks like. That and the rears are going to be more involved because the fronts I can literally just take the existing lowering springs and struts and drop them in. This is going to be a lot harder, so I want to get that done because that might take longer.
Alright, back on track. Had some difficulties. I did not think, and nobody told me, you put a shorter spring inside of a stock shock and it's going to fit a little bit more loosely. So when I had it out, away from the vehicle, if I pulled up on the top hat of the shock, the spring would want to fall out. With the tension that the bushings and the suspension put on it, currently it's not going anywhere. I still don't like it, because if I somehow manage to bottom out these shocks, the spring will fall out. Hopefully, yeah, see? You can turn that inside of that, and I don't like that at all. So, just I guess I'll go slow over bumps for now. Not that you should ever go fast over bumps, but I mean, I'll just make sure to not bounce the rear end up and down, especially since this is stock dampening on lowered springs, so it's supposedly going to ride extremely bad. However, we are back on track, so back to the time lapse. Sorry about that, my phone died. I mistakenly thought that a 25% charge would last me through the rest of this video. I forgot that the camera uses a lot more juice, and I'm using a different microphone, so yeah, I went through my remaining battery faster than I thought. Anyways, the rear end is lowered. That actually doesn't look half bad, just like it is. Part of me is tempted to leave it like that, except that I've got perfectly good springs sitting right there. Might as well use them. Plus I need an excuse to roll those fenders. So I'm gonna find a way to prop my phone up while it's plugged into a battery pack. For those of you who don't know, you might not be able to tell, but if you were to take a measuring tool of some kind, tape measure, caliper, whatever you want, go from the inside edge of this bolt to this what they call the top hat, you'd find that there's less distance between these two than there is between these two. And so what you would do as part of your alignment, you would just, I'm just gonna trap this right there, you just spin this whole thing. So obviously the way I have it, so again, these two have the least amount of space, so the center of the shock, the way it tips, that's gonna determine the way it tips. So these two are closer. So if I were to put these two on the inside like that, the shock's gonna tip a little bit more that way. So that's how I would do that to adjust for the most negative camber if I wanted to camber in my wheels. If I do this like I had it, I have a good mix between camber and I think it's called rake or trail, whatever. The shock will be tipped back towards the vehicle a little bit, which will makes for steadier steering. Might not be as responsive, but it'll hold a better line going down the highway. Obviously, if you were to flip that around, it would have more responsive steering. And if you were to put these two on the outside here, your shock would be tipped more towards the outside. So the way I have it is supposedly, if I'm not mistaken, a good balance between negative camber and stability by tipping the shock in and back a little bit. I could just tip the shock in as much as I could, but the rest of my camber is kind of left up to the two bolts in the knuckle, but mine are just regular bolts, so I can't really adjust that. I need to get some camber bolts up in there. I think I have some, I just haven't put them up front yet. And I'm not going to with this old shock. But yeah, the lowering spring is going to be the exact same way. The only difference, because I believe this is an OEM shock as well, it's just newer. It has a newer top hat. Supposedly, although now that I'm looking at them, this doesn't look like it'll lower it all that much. Or at all. Then again, there's no weight on it. But supposedly these are lowering springs. It does have a bit of a different coil to it. I think this one's a little bit more progressive than this one. This part does look a little bit lower than this one does. No, it's just this plate is flipped around on that one. But it was definitely lower last time I put them on. Okay, so apparently not only did my phone die, but it's now doing this thing where it decides how long I get to film. So it shut off my camera and didn't give me an alert tone, anything, nothing like that. It just decided to shut it off. So I'm guessing what this, okay, so if my screen is, if I'm reading my screen correctly, I've got 11 minutes left to film. I'm wondering if I'm out of storage. Fortunately, with the TikTok ban and CapCut being taken offline, I will probably move to editing on my PC with Filmora or something like that. So I guess I'll be pulling all of my footage off this phone anyway. But in any case, that is definitely lower in the front. Honestly, I think that looks pretty nice. It didn't look all that nice the first time I lowered it because I didn't have the lowering springs on the back. The guy who sold me these thought he had grabbed the rear ones out of his storage shed and they were for like a Subaru or something like that, so they were the wrong ones. So I only ever ended up buying these. He couldn't find the rear ones, so I only got the fronts. Granted, I have not driven it back and forth because I know that when you raise the car up, the wheels hang in a little bit. So when you set it down, the tires will only let the shocks go so far out. And obviously, it's not going to affect it a large amount, but that is pretty. This is probably the lowest car I've ever owned. But I think that looks pretty good. Sorry if I'm hanging the camera a little bit low. I've got my company truck in the background and I'm trying not to put that on camera. Of course, I can only do so much. But there we go. It's lowered. It's got the side exit exhaust. I think all you would need to do a simple stock car setup would be to can't speak anymore. Would be to put a ducktail on the back, or just no spoiler at all. Honestly, I think if I just removed the spoiler, this would look a whole lot better. I would take you guys for a ride in it, but I don't have any way to fasten my camera to something. I don't have anybody to film for me. But yeah, let me know in the comments, should I have well, I was going to ask, should I have gotten coilovers, but I can't afford those. I was going to go with the ground control coilover conversions, the coil sleeves with the adjustable little nut on the bottom. It kind of turns your stock shocks into coilovers, but they were like $500 for the set, whereas I got the Megan Racings for, technically I bought these two for, I think it was $100. And I bought the entire set of Megan, all four of the Megan Racing coils for $100. So $200 for what this is right here, and that means I've got extra springs right now. And this is kind of what I wanted, a subtle drop. I didn't want to slam it on the ground, especially since these tips are now barely the width of my hand from the ground. Luckily, this is the lowest point in the exhaust as far as I'm aware, so if those don't scrape, the rest, none of the rest of it will either. Lowered. I got it lowered. I got the coolant leak fixed. Exhaust is back to how it was. Whole car is lowered. So now, all I gotta do before Cars and Coffee Morrisville on February 1st is clean up these headlights, put LEDs in them, and get that parking light. Get the other parking light in there. I am kind of out of daylight. It's like dusk right now. Otherwise, I'd go for a bit more. I could set up a shop light, have a little more time to film, but I think the darker it'll get. I mean, my video quality is already going down because of the dark, so I'm not going to make it any worse. As far as fitment is concerned, my next move will probably either be to get some Bassett Racing steel wheelies, probably some 15 by 7s with a 3 to 4 inch backspace, or I've been seeing some sets of Panasport racing rims on there. I believe they're for the Miatas, but they look an awful lot like the Daisies. They're just deeper. They're also 15 by 7s. Don't know what kind of offset they have. So I can either go to 15 by 7 D-window Steelies, like full NASCAR setup, or I can go to Miata racing wheels, which would eliminate the spacer but keep the fitment that I want. And then once I get my wheels and tires nailed down the way I want them, then we'll start thinking about whether or not I'm putting a body kit on here. Right now I like the way it looks. At some point in a future video, I believe I said this in my introductory video, but I'm going to make some spacers slash, legs for the spoiler, raise it up maybe a half an inch to an inch, and then move it back till it's flush with the back of the car. I just feel like that would look better than this. Either that, or I'll just take a strip of metal and make a ducktail on the back. Of course, if I had my way and I was able to mid-engine swap this, put the engine right about there, I'd probably go full GT40, get rid of the back window, and just put a flat back window, make a extended trunk lid in where the rear seats would be, and then this would just be a pillar. The actual window would be back here, just straight up and down. And then it also would I probably wouldn't put a ducktail, but I would probably build up this little bit. I mean, if I went for my poor man's GT40 build, the entire rear end would end up getting redone along with the front. Well, not so much the front, but especially the rear. The biggest problems I have with this car are how bulbous and high the roof stands up and how pinched the rear end is. But with it lowered like this, I'm satisfied with this, especially with the side exit exhaust. The only way a single exhaust could give me the vibe that this dual exhaust setup gives off is if I had some Bosuzoku pipes sticking up out of the back. Nothing like extreme like they do in Japan, just maybe, some 2 feet, 3 foot, stacks coming out the back right there. I had intended this, for now, I was just going to use this car for multiple exhaust builds, kind of like Hater's Garage with his Nissan Sentra Spec V. With the blue one with the gray door that identifies as a blue door. I always thought that was funny. He's the reason I bought this car in the first place, in a roundabout way. I was thinking about getting a small car and was kind of wondering how to do a NASCAR exhaust on it. And then I saw his dual exhaust video, decided that my next car would be a 4-banger with a manual, and I put a dual exhaust on it. And then I had actually thought about doing the zoomies on the 4-banger, and then he went and did it, so he kind of got to that before I did. But I was going to do the same thing he did, where I did a bunch of different exhaust builds. Same car, just like 15 different exhausts on it. But now I'm kind of starting to wonder if I should nail this thing down, have a specific build for it, and just make it one thing. Maybe get some other piece of trash car to put multiple exhausts off. Preferably something a little bit higher up so I don't have to jack it up as much, and something with a little more space underneath of it. So I don't have to cramp my hand up in places just to get the exhaust in. which is what I had to do with the water pump. The water pump, you got to pull it out a little bit, and you got to basically kind of shove it inside the orifice while turning it on its side, and then snake it out, because the frame rail is like this far from the pulley. When the water pump is in and the pulley is on the water pump, you got this much space. So I couldn't use a ratchet, which is part of why I didn't film that portion, because it just okay, it just cut it off again. I should probably end this video before I run out of storage space. I might have to edit it later, cut out all the rambling parts. But yeah, it's lowered, coolant is fixed, exhaust is done. Next is headlights and parking light. That is my definite next, is headlights and parking light. Hope you guys enjoyed. Oh yeah, that's getting really grainy. Anyway, stay tuned. There will be more videos coming.